And while the US has perhaps announced new sanctions on Russia in a span of 50 days if a deal is not reached, a Kyiv Post report says that Western components are still fueling Russian airstrikes. An investigation by the International Partnership for Human Rights, or IPHR, with the help of the Ukrainian Independent Anti-Corruption Commission and published on Kyiv Post found that Russian fighter jets shot down over Ukraine were found to contain hundreds of foreign electronic parts. All this despite Western sanctions. Researchers examined the wreckage of downed Su-34 fighter bombers and Su-35's air superiority jets. They traced 1,115 out of 1,119 electronic components to foreign companies. The question being, where are these parts from? Well, they found that the parts came from 141 companies across the world, mostly from the United States, and others came from Germany, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea and Switzerland. Major manufacturers include Analog Devices, Texas Instruments, Intel and Murata. And don't be mistaken, these tiny parts do big things. They power targeting systems, communications, navigation and guidance on Russia's most advanced jets. Well, I am talking about integrated circuits, microcontrollers, field programmable gate arrays, and they are all extremely important to Russian airstrikes on Ukraine. Which brings us to the main question: how perhaps are they reaching Russia, and all this despite the sanctions imposed by the West? Well, according to this very report, Moscow is using shell companies as well as complex trade routes to access them through China, Hong Kong, Turkey, UAE and even some European nations. In 2023 alone, over 180,000 shipments of microelectronic items reportedly reached Russia. They were worth more than $800 million. Well, many shipments were valued under $10,000 in a bid to avoid detection. Some Russian companies reportedly even advertised their expertise in bypassing these sanctions. Now, this report accuses the West of perhaps having failed to enforce their controls effectively. A line from the report says, and I'm quoting here, "In the third year of Russia's full-scale war on Ukraine, Western policymakers have largely failed to disrupt the Russian military's supply chains." And here's the bigger picture. Despite Western sanctions, Russia's war machine is still running very smoothly. New data shows that in 2023 alone, Russia imported nearly $22 billion in critical components. That includes $9 billion worth of battlefield items. These are parts, and perhaps these components are reaching Russia through third countries like China, Turkey, the UAE, and even some European nations. One shocking figure: almost 98% of restricted electronics are routed through these intermediaries, and shell companies hide the real buys as well. Shipments are then broken down into small packages in a bid to avoid any kind of detection. And as a result, Russian missile and drone manufacturing, it has now surpassed pre-war levels. And all this, just to remind you, despite Western sanctions on Russia, despite the sweeping measures imposed by the West on Russia that were meant to curb Russia's war machine. What seemingly emerges from all of this is that Western sanctions on Russia are just an eyewash. 3 years on, Russia's war machine is still running, and Ukrainian sites keep burning. If the world truly wants this war to come to an end, it's time to stop pretending sanctions are enough. It's time to get both the sides on the table. All right, in other news, Australia is conducting its largest war games in its history, known as Exercise Talisman Sabre, amid China's expanding military deployment in the Indo-Pacific region. Our next report telling you more.
For the first time, Australian troops have fired the US-made HIMARS long-range rocket system during live military drills. These truck-mounted rocket launchers can strike targets up to 400 kilometers away. The HIMARS, or the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, has emerged as a major weapon, especially for long-range precision strikes. Fast, mobile and lethal, it is in high demand among US allies across the globe, including the Indo-Pacific region. Australia now joins that list with an official demonstration of its firepower. Born as a bilateral drill between Australia and the US back in 2005, at this year's Talisman Sabre exercise, around 40,000 troops from 19 countries are coordinating across thousands of kilometers. Stretching from Australia's Indian Ocean territory of Christmas Island near Indonesia to the Coral Sea on its eastern coast. Countries participating in the exercise include the United States, Japan, South Korea, India, France, Germany, Indonesia, Canada and the UK, among others. This year, the exercise also expands beyond Australia for the first time into neighbouring Papua New Guinea. The drills include live fire exercises with US F-35B stealth fighters, ground-launched missiles and coordinated land-sea-air operations.
The shifting availability of military technology means that countries don't have to come close to Australia as they did in the past. We had thought the sea-air gap, the waters to our north, were a great protective buffer. Well, modern weaponry very quickly traverses that gap now, so we have to respond to that, and it means that the idea of protecting the homeland, it means that countries don't have to come close to us to present a threat or to seek to potentially impact the way a government might make decisions. It can do it from afar, and we have to be able to respond to that.
In the past 4 Talisman Sabre exercises, Chinese surveillance ships have been spotted off Australia's coast, shadowing every move. And Chinese vessels are expected to monitor this year's exercises as well. As China's footprint grows across contested waters, countries like Australia are moving to assert readiness and coordination among allies. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, across Africa, a growing trend is raising serious questions about democracy. Aging leaders clinging to power, often by rewriting the rules or ignoring them altogether. In Cameroon, President Paul Biya, now 92, has officially declared his intention to seek an 8th term in the presidential election, scheduled for October 12th. Biya, who first took office in 1982, announced his candidacy on social media, stating that he remains committed to leading the country despite mounting challenges. Now, if re-elected, he could remain in office until nearly 100 years old. And his health remains a topic of concern, especially after a 42-day public absence last year. Under Biya's leadership, Cameroon has reportedly grappled with deep economic troubles and persistent violence. The English-speaking regions reportedly reel from a drawn-out separatist insurgency, while Boko Haram's deployment in the north remains a deadly threat. Apart from Cameroon, in Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni, aged 80, said he will contest next year's election, seeking a 7th term in office. He seized power in 1986 after a civil war and has ruled the East African country for nearly 4 decades. According to reports, Museveni has consistently brushed aside retirement calls and consolidated his grip over both the government and his own party. Experts warn that Uganda is drifting further into authoritarianism, with opposition voices virtually silenced. Ouattara has led the country since 2011. His presidency has reportedly brought economic growth, but has also drew accusations of targeting political opponents and bending the rules in the country. Now, Ivory Coast's constitution limits presidents to 2 5-year terms. However, in 2016, his administration oversaw the adoption of an amended version of the constitution, allowing the president to run again in 2020 and now possibly once more. Now, the three African leaders extended their own rule raises important questions. Number one, are they just simply refusing to let go? Or is democracy just a term on paper in all these three countries? Well, we now shift our attention to West Asia, where tensions are growing in Israel over a controversial plan put forward by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli military has reportedly pushed back against Bibi's proposal to relocate most of Gaza's civilians towards the southern part of the enclave into what has now been described as a concentration camp. According to reports, during a heated cabinet session on Sunday night, the IDF officials warned that Bibi's plan could risk ongoing ceasefire and hostage negotiations with Hamas, further saying that the plan could exceed $4 billion and also take over a year to implement. Netanyahu's plan reportedly aims to move an initial 600,000 Palestinians into what's being described as a humanitarian city built on the ruins of Rafah, with the long-term goal being the forced relocation of Gaza's entire population of more than 2 million people. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, in an interview with The Guardian, called the Rafah proposal akin to a concentration camp, further stating that forcing Palestinians into such a zone could be viewed as an act of ethnic cleansing. Now, during World War II, concentration camps were centers where Nazi Germany imprisoned Jews, political opponents, and other groups. Millions of innocent people were tortured, starved, and killed in these concentration camps, and that's during the Holocaust as well. Under Bibi's proposed plan, Palestinians entering the camp would reportedly undergo screenings, be unable to leave, and depend entirely on aid from foreign agencies, with the IDF guarding the borders. Now, Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, earlier this month said that those inside would be encouraged to immigrate from Gaza permanently. Israel's Channel 12 reported that Netanyahu responded angrily to the military's reluctance, demanding a faster timeline, and told the IDF that he expects, and I'm quoting Bibi here, a realistic plan. Now, frictions between Netanyahu and the IDF have intensified, especially in the past few weeks. Earlier this month, the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, reportedly cautioned Netanyahu during a cabinet meeting that this plan could cause Israel to lose operational control in Gaza altogether. US President Donald Trump, who has floated similar ideas and plans to depopulate Gaza, said that a ceasefire agreement could be finalized within a week.
Gaza, we are talking, and hopefully we're going to get that straightened out over the next week. Let's see what happens.
Well, India-Bangladesh ties have seen some turbulence in recent months, but in a gesture aimed at thawing these relations, Bangladesh's interim chief, Mohammad Yunus, has revived the long-standing tradition of mango diplomacy with India. Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus of Bangladesh has sent 1,000 kg of Haribhanga mangoes to Prime Minister Modi as a gesture of friendship between the two neighbouring countries. The mangoes that were sent through Akhora land port on Thursday were packed in 60 cartons. Officials handed over the consignment to Bangladesh Assistant High Commission representatives in Agartala. The Yunus government has also sent mango consignments to chief ministers of states bordering Bangladesh. Now, the Bangladesh government has been sending seasonal mangoes to India for several years now as a symbol of cultural ties and regional diplomacy. Now, mango diplomacy, which was started by former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, serves as a symbol of goodwill and exchange amid recent tensions between the two countries. However, behind the soft veneer of mango diplomacy lies a far more complex situation, with Yunus administration formally requesting the extradition of the former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who is living in exile in India. Not just that. Since the Yunus interim government came to power, anti-Hindu demonstrations have rocked Bangladesh, with reports suggesting that Hindu houses and temples, including ISKCON and Kali temples, were targeted in Bangladesh.